No, no, not yet. No one's ready for that yet. You'll get your chance, Cindy. Good morning and welcome to Extraordinarily Ordinary, the channel where we celebrate living ordinary lives in extraordinary ways. I'm Danae and happy Saturday. Truth be told, I am really quite tired today. I have no good explanation for it, but I did spend an amazing week practicing a lot of conscientious thought monitoring, especially after my epiphany pertaining to judge not lest ye be judged. And one of the things I discovered about that tenet is it is applicable to absolutely everything, from the ways we judge ourselves to the ways we judge the people and the world around us. And I don't know about you, but there is something about getting behind the wheel of a car that just transforms me into a troglodytean tyrant. Admittedly, I did have a much easier time of it this week. However, there were moments when I was tempted by my habitual brain to fall right back into judgment mode. However, as a result of my conscientious thought monitoring, I was able to sidestep the temptation. And that leads me to one of the points I wanted to make this morning about the process of change. Whenever we begin to fiddle with our default settings or attempt to relegate our autopilots to the back seat, we are going to encounter resistance. And that's because our habitual brains have been programmed and convinced us to believe that the patterns, our thought patterns, our life patterns, are what have successfully sustained us and kept us alive over a lifetime's worth of experience. Our brain believes that a repetition of these patterns is what is going to keep us safe for the day. It's going to keep us alive and healthy and ready to face another tomorrow. However, whenever we encounter these moments of resistance or temptations to slip back into patterns, we may be inclined to believe that we are failing, or worse yet, failures, that we are self-sabotaging, or even that we are incapable of change. However, the resistance is all just part of the process. And believe it or not, it can be an effective and powerful tool in your journey towards change. The resistance itself is an indication that we are doing something differently. And more than that, it is a powerful indicator that we are experiencing change right then, in the moment when the resistance occurs. So, as opposed to judging ourselves as failures, self-defeating, or incapable of change, we can actually acknowledge that we are in the process of evolving. We are experiencing change. Otherwise, the resistance never would have manifested. So we need to welcome the moments of resistance and the moments where we are tempted to slip back into old patterns with open arms and with open minds, because they are the indicators that we are, in fact, experiencing our own personal evolutions. The important thing is that we acknowledge the resistance, that we understand that it is there and the purpose that it serves. Evolution is not something that happens overnight, which brings me to my next point. Evolution is an incredibly subjective process based upon our willingness to let go and experience something new. So it can happen as quickly or as painstakingly slowly as we choose. The important thing in this process, though, is to acknowledge the resistance and the temptations and recognize them for what they are. They are the hallmarks, they are the indicators that we are going through a metamorphosis. And it's entirely up to us how we want to handle that. Patience, kindness, conscientious thought, and active participation are the keys to having an amazing evolutionary experience. And it also doesn't hurt to have a sense of humor about everything as well. Because there are going to be moments when you confront your previous patterns and hold them into juxtaposition with the experience that you're creating now, and they will seem absolutely ridiculous. I know that's what happened for me, and choosing to be entertained by the process has been truly inspiring. It also makes it a bit more bearable when I have to suck the lemon when I confront a previous pattern that is so counterproductive to my current goals. As I mentioned a few moments ago, conscious thought and active participation are two of the keys to really enjoying the evolutionary process, which leads me to the topic I would like to discuss with you today, which is my thoughts, my territory. My thoughts, my territory is a technique that I like to use to interrupt a train of thought that is about to take me to a negative destination or even an uncomfortable destination. It is a technique or a mantra, if you will, that allows me to recenter and regain control of my thoughts. But more important than this, it is also an effective tool for interrupting the patterns of my thoughts. And it allows me to evaluate what's actually happening in the moment and then decide how I want to respond to it. As I've said before, and you'll probably hear me say it 1,000 more times, interrupting our thought patterns is the first step in reprogramming our minds. It's the first step in learning how to choose what we think and consequently how we respond and consequently how we feel. And as we go through the process of retraining our brains, a sense of empowerment will begin to manifest. Because not only are we participating in life, but we are also creating the experience of life itself for ourselves. Now imagine what life would be like if empowerment, active participation, and active creation became our default settings. How amazing would that be? And the wonderful thing is, we don't have to wait to begin. We can start today. And it can all begin with my thoughts, my territory. I can't wait to discuss this with you. Just give me a few moments and I'll be back.
What's going on? Could somebody cue up Cindy and the girls? Cindy! Oh. Extraordinarily ordinary. What is she doing? Thank you!
Okay, I'm back. But before we begin today's discussion on my thoughts, my territory, I need to provide a very quick disclaimer. I am not a counselor. I am not a clinical psychologist, nor am I a psychiatrist. I am no one credentialed in the mental health field. So if you feel you are struggling with issues related to mental health, please contact an experienced mental health care provider. Now, let's get into today's discussion on my thoughts, my territory. As I mentioned before, this mantra, this practice, is the most effective way of reestablishing ourselves in the present tense and consciously evaluating the thoughts that are going through our heads. It also allows us to interrupt our thought patterns, evaluate their purposes, and determine whether or not they serve us in the attainment of our current goals. If you are anything like me, you probably have an adept skill for dredging up every mistake you have ever made and then ruminating upon those mistakes to the point where you re-experience every humiliation and embarrassment that accompanied those mistakes. And I mean in full technicolor, self-censoring, self-defeating detail. In addition to that, you may also have a knack for introducing worry and or anxiety into situations wherein there is actually no evidence to support the necessity of such preoccupations. These patterns of thoughts and behaviors are intrinsically linked with what we believe about ourselves, especially when we are evaluating who we once were compared to who we are and how far that places us from where and who we want to be. Re-experiencing the negative emotions of a mistake is actually the voice of our higher minds, our greater intentions, interjecting itself and reminding us to take stock and ownership of the lessons that we have learned over the course of making those mistakes that have led to our greatest embarrassments and humiliations. It may seem counterintuitive that our voices of greater reason should interject in a manner that feels so defeating and so deflating. However, once we've reached a point in our lives where we have determined that we deserve better and we have set an intention to improve our lives and to improve our relationship with the world, with our circumstances, most importantly, with ourselves, these interjections, these voices from our higher intentions are actually providing us with the indications and the very things that need to be released, the things we need to let go in order to move from one state of being to the next. We could very easily convince ourselves that re-experiencing the humiliations, the embarrassments, the anxieties, the unnecessary worries are all indications that we are not worthy of the happiness or newness that we intend to create and experience. But let me reassure you that the very opposite is true. The trick is when we are triggered to re-experience the negative emotions of our mistakes, what we need to recognize is this is a road sign. This is our higher intention interjecting, slapping us in the face and saying, look, you've learned this lesson. Take ownership of this lesson, celebrate your progress, and move forward. Instead, we can often fall into the habitual thoughts and patterns that lead us into a negative headspace, into a negative emotion of unworthiness, when in all actuality, this pattern of thought, this pattern of behavior is something that can be interrupted, redirected, and remedied. So, when we begin to re-experience the negative thoughts and emotions of our mistakes, we need to recognize that now is the time to take action. And this is where the mantra and method of my thoughts, my territory comes into play. Again, my thoughts, my territory is a fantastic practice to put a stop to the patterns of thoughts that lead us down to negative destinations. And it's implemented by simply recognizing where we are in our heads, in our thought patterns, and once something begins to feel uncomfortable, once something triggers that emotion of unworthiness, that emotion of humiliation, that emotion of embarrassment, we need to be triggered to say no. My thoughts, my territory. And subsequent to that, we need to acknowledge the emotion, evaluate its purpose in our current circumstances, glean the lessons from it that we will, and then deliberately redirect and focus our minds and our attention to the intentions and goals we have set for ourselves.
Let's try something, shall we?
I want you to imagine a red balloon hovering over your head, and attached to that red balloon is a purple ribbon that you're holding in your hand. And now I want you to imagine that the red balloon represents your resistance to growth, your resistance to self-acceptance, your resistance to change, whatever type of resistance it is that you may be experiencing in the moment. And I want you to imagine opening your hand and allowing that balloon to drift away on the current of the breeze, up, up, up and away, into the sky and into the clouds beyond your point of view. And now that you've released the balloon, I want you to take a moment to revel in the peace that goes along with letting go of that resistance. And now I want you to see a plate of your favorite food before you. And I want you to imagine taking your knife and fork and cutting into that food, placing a morsel into your mouth and savoring all of the delicious flavor combinations that make that culinary creation your favorite. Savor it, imagine it, taste it. And now I want you to hear your favorite song playing while you're eating this delicious meal. Feel its beat, hear its chorus, allow it to move you in the ways that you enjoy so much. And in addition to this, I want you to imagine that you are enjoying this piece, this meal, this music with your favorite person in the entire world. I want you to imagine their presence, feel their warmth, and revel in the joy of this shared experience. And now I want you to acknowledge that each of these things was a product of your thoughts, of your mind, of your concepts of the things that create happiness in your life. They are your thoughts, your territory. Therefore, you are empowered to acknowledge and release resistance and redirect your thoughts towards the intentions and goals and experiences that you wish to create in your life. There is no need to further shame ourselves for the mistakes that we have made, nor is there any further need for us to re-experience the humiliations and embarrassments of our pasts, especially when we have learned the lessons to be gleaned from those missteps. I hope you've enjoyed today's discussion on my thoughts, my territory. If you decide to implement this practice, please let me know how it goes in the comments below. Until next time, be kind, be fabulous, and enjoy the experience of life.